The themes of the Gospels in the last few weeks and even into this weekend coming is love. This is part of a long dissertation that Jesus gave at his Last Supper as John records it. John doesn't record the breaking of the bread. He records the washing of the feet of the Last Supper. He records this long, long teaching of Jesus and his role. And this is almost the pinnacle of it, and more will come Sunday, as I said. Love. As the Father loves me, I love you. We're going to continue that in our homily on Sunday because it's such a challenging experience to understand God's love and to take it into our lives from the perspective of Jesus. He's telling us he wants us to love him like he loves the Father. My goodness, how intimate, what an invitation. This is Jesus, Son of God, Creator himself, from all eternity, coexistent with the Father, intimate with the Father, and he's saying, I want to pass that on to you. Whoa, this is wonderful. But the focus of today, besides love, is on the Acts of the Apostles. The background, real quick. Jesus was Jew, his apostles were Jews. Jews had many, many, many regulations. So after Pentecost, when the apostles started spreading out and converting Jews to Christianity, guess what? Eventually the time came when it went beyond the borders of the Jews and it went to Gentiles. And that's something also we'll pick up on Sunday's example with Cornelius and Peter. So what happens is, just by natural observation, the apostles are mingling with people who they never mingled with before, the Gentiles, because they were, quote, unclean. And then they got a little hyper and they said, well, should we be doing this? Wait. Maybe the Gentiles should become Jews, and then after they become Jews, we can welcome them into Christianity. And that was a great debate in the early church. You and I don't care about it, but it was a great debate. So today we have some of the fallout of that. And there's a discussion going on that God, from the earliest of times, has taken care of all people. And we bear witness to God's good work. Look at ourselves. Look at what he's done. And we have not only Peter, Paul and Barnabas get up, and James responds. And he's saying, basically, God goes beyond borders. God goes to all people. And we shouldn't impose on Gentiles Jewish law because it's gone. Jesus fulfilled the Jewish law. Those who remain Jews, that's their choice to observe the law. But those who are being converted, who were not Jews, don't have to go through the observation of Judaism. Now, you and I know what that means. Those people who are coming into the Catholic Church, if they were baptized in another church, they have to make an acclamation of faith, the creed that we say every Sunday. If a person was never baptized, he or she has to go through what we call RCIA, Rite of Christian Initiation for Adults. What is that? It's education, Christian education. So there are many ways in which we, even today, have stipulations before a person is in full communion with us. The doors are always open. Everybody's invited, of course. So it goes back to the early days when they had this debate going on. And the key phrase that I liked in today's scriptures are, God who knows the heart bore witness by granting them the Holy Spirit. In other words, those people who are coming to us and want to be baptized receive the Holy Spirit. I mean, you don't know how, I don't know how, God knows how, and God read their hearts. They were open to receiving the Holy Spirit, and they received the Holy Spirit. They wanted to proclaim their faith. They wanted to become Christian. And that's very important for the early church, because we judge on what we see. God doesn't. God judges by looking at our hearts. God reads every one of our hearts, every one of our intentions. We begin Mass, we place the intentions before the Lord, and I have the privilege of being here, so I say some of my intentions out loud. But God reads all of your intentions as you are proclaiming them, as we're gathering. as we're asking him to watch over our intentions, prayer, peace, justice, civil obedience, civil relationships in our society. God hears all of that. And prayer is important because it's placing before God our intentions. Prayer is not just a wish. This is not idle stuff. Prayer is communication with God, and he reads our hearts. So when we say something to God, he knows what we're saying. When we don't say it out loud, he reads our hearts. He knows our intentions. And he also knows the intentions of those of us who gather here and those of us who leave, and he knows what is the attitude with which we leave. We're not perfect. We're Christians. We sin. We know that. But we have the sacrament of reconciliation. So although I have sinned, I want to apologize and return to God. So through the sacrament of meeting God in the sacrament of reconciliation, I can go back to God who reads my heart. And that's an external way of us telling God what's in our hearts, even though only you know what you do and what you don't do, what's good and what's bad. But God does. And I think it was important for the early church to realize that we didn't start today because we received the Holy Spirit after Pentecost. We started in antiquity. We started with Abraham, our ancestor. And this quote from James, talking about how God took care of his people even in antiquity. He says, "After this I shall return and rebuild the fallen hut of David." Now, the hut of David is a sarcastic way of saying the family tree of David, okay? Because David was the king. And through David's intervention, and Solomon built the great temple, and from that little hut, the moving nomadic tribes of Israel, they build a temple, temples glorifying God. And all are invited to the temple of Jesus. Not the temple in Jerusalem, the temple of Jesus he's talking about. So God knew in advance what would happen, and because we have free will, each one of us chooses. But even in the process of choice, God's reading our hearts. Even the process of coming to church, God reads our hearts. How many of us were, I don't know, maybe too tired to wake up this morning to come to Mass, but you did it anyway. Okay, you came. Well, God knows that. You know it. I know it because I see you, but God knows it above all. And maybe it's the Holy Spirit who gave us the energy to respond. That Holy Spirit of God is so important in our lives. It connects us with God. It's almost like, and this is only a metaphor, it's almost like a connection, an unseen connection. What do you call when things aren't connected to the wires without wires? Wireless, okay. It's a wireless connection we have with God, okay? And you know how your phone, you don't have a wire on it, but you can call anybody you want to? Well, just imagine that in a very, very spiritual and beautiful way. Immediately, you don't even have to dial. He's with us. He reads our hearts. Now, so therefore, why should I pray? To let your heart be known to God. And it keeps us honest, too. It keeps us honest because I know God watches over me. I know God is listening to me. So he keeps us honest. So what I say and what I do have to be consistent because God knows my intentions. If I'm negative in any way, God knows that. But we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about our consistency, our dedication to God, and our will to be united to God. So the early apostles say, listen, God's on our side. We've got to bring these people on board. We've got to welcome them because we didn't choose them. The Holy Spirit chose them. And that's why you're all here today. The Holy Spirit chose you to be here. We open our hearts to God who reads them, and we place our prayers before him.